On my kicker tonight, I beg to differ with the obsession of Kenyan politicians and economists with the success story of Singapore. I differ because the obsession is both hollow and misplaced, and quite frankly, dishonest. Dishonest because Kenyan politicians and economists don't tell us, for example, that Singapore, which was part of Malaysia, got its independence from Britain at exactly the same time as Kenya, 1963. It was 2 years later, 1965, that Singapore broke away from Malaysia to become an independent city-state and nation. Why is no one telling us and how these two Asian tigers, born at the same time as Kenya, managed to move so far ahead, both economically and politically? My answer to this is very simple. Malaysia and Singapore did what sensible countries do. They did not squander their years of independence. They made a solemn pledge to their people and went to work. African nations, on the other hand, welcomed independence with open arms, not to begin the journey of national renewal, but to open a new page of plunder that made the white colonialists look like saints. The story of the founding father of Singapore differs sharply with that of African leaders. Lee Kuan Yew proceeded with vision and nationalistic zeal to found his country on sound economic and political principles, as African founding fathers obsessed with power, personal wealth, and self-preservation. From Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda, who declared himself president for life in tiny Malawi, to Felix Hupet Boigny of Ivory Coast, who constructed a crocodile-infested artificial lake in his palace, Africa had between little and nothing to compare itself with Lee Kuan Yew's Singapore. African founding fathers, with the exception of Tanzania's Julius Nyerere, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, and Seretse Khama of Botswana, were never on the same footing as Lee Kuan Yew, and most of them left their countries worse off than they were under colonial rule. Look at the irony of Zimbabwean founding president Robert Mugabe dying in, wait for this, Singapore, and not his native Zimbabwe. If Zimbabwe were Mugabe's family, the former leader would have required a fundraiser for his burial. This is because by the time he was leaving office 2 years ago, Zimbabwe, that was once known as the jewel of Africa, had turned into the shame of Africa, a basket case. This is why economists and politicians that continue admiring the story of Singapore should give us a break. We, Kenya, cannot replicate the story without getting the basics right and without playing by the rules. Singapore's success is a product of two things: clear visionary leadership and fiscal as well as political discipline, and guided and governed by a consistent and absolute belief in the rule of law. Let us face it, Kenya does not do well with the rule of law. We occasionally observe the law and bend it and break it altogether many other times. Our country does not do well in fiscal and political discipline either. Official corruption has never been punished and is instead worn as a badge of honor in elective politics. Try official corruption in any Asian tiger nation and you'll find out why former Prime Minister Najib Razak of Malaysia is in the dock and will most certainly be in jail for corruption. The analogies online, we cannot be Singapore without basics, is like without observing the rule of law. We cannot be Singapore without leadership that rallies the country around a common purpose. We cannot be Singapore when tribe and not ideas is what informs choices during elections, and not when the governance in between is attended to by sheer indiscipline and endless bickering of a most petty kind. Let's get the basics right before we start thinking Singapore. That's my kicker.